So, Dr. Constance Harris has nearly 20 years of experience in IT consulting and management in higher education. She earned her PhD in curriculum and instruction from Purdue University in 2013, where she worked as a teaching assistant in educational technology and a research assistant in engineering education. After graduation, she joined Purdue's IT division as an instructional technologist and a faculty consultant for the Impact program. In 2015, Dr. Harris moved to George Washington University, advancing from manager of instructional design to assistant director. At George Mason University, she spearheaded the Online Course Development Institute, a flagship program for the Stern Center for Teaching and Learning, which won the 2016 Information Technology Project Excellence Team Award. Since 2018, Dr. Harris has served as the Director of Online Learning at the University of Baltimore. She oversees the instructional design team, faculty development, and the learning management system, including leading the university's migration to Canvas LMS in 2023. I would say anybody who's ever had to do an LMS migration, go ahead and put yes in the chat because if you haven't, this is a massive, massive, massive undertaking that changes everything. I'll continue on. Her research interests include instructional design management, project-based learning, and servant leadership. Her leadership continues to shape the university's strategic direction in online education. So what she is going to be talking to us about is Tales from the Front, leading institution-level online learning initiatives. So everybody give a warm welcome to Dr. Constance Harris. We are so happy she is here.
Oh my. Well, colleagues, listen, and Kay, AECT conference, he asked me to do the keynote, and I'm very, very excited to do this. Like anything I do, I want to give you everything, but I want to give you some highlights. Okay, so I do want this to be as interactive as possible. I can't see, everyone, but I do want to, just give you a bit of my backstory, talk about the Online Course Development Institute that I worked with our team at George Mason University to develop. I'll touch on some of my work as the project lead and initiator for our Canvas transition, and then also talk about just some guiding principles as well. So these are the topics that, I'll talk about today. I have a burning question like, what got me started in the field? My professional progression and practice, some guiding principles of the work in Q&A. And please, kind of feel free to ask questions, as I'm talking as well. Normally, if we were, in the same space, this would be more of a dialogue. But just to get started, this is my ethics in IT class from 2006 at Purdue University Calumet. And at the time, I was an academic advisor and an adjunct instructor. And I wanted to know at the time, how can I be a better instructor for the students and make learning more engaging for them? Because at the time, as an adjunct, I didn't have any, I didn't have a theory behind me. Wait, let me go back. I didn't have theory behind me and that kind of thing. And so I went to all the faculty and I asked people, well, how can I make the learning more engaging? In this class, it was really about computer crime and stuff like that. So I was bringing in YouTube videos about people committing crime, identity theft, stealing over the internet, voting, using RFID chips and stuff like that. And everybody was like, oh, Constance, you'll know what to do. you're a good instructor. Well, I have to tell you that I felt at the time that was not good enough. I mean, just getting up there in my mind and winging it on behalf of the students was not enough. And this is basically my entire class. Why I even mention that is because the class never missed. Everybody came to this class, and one of the students told me that at first he didn't study, but then he did study, read the book and stuff like that, like you're supposed to do, because I made the class interesting. So I knew that there was something to the theory and practice and teaching of students that I could make a more engaging learning experience for the students in a more engaging teaching experience and something very innovative and exciting for myself. So I ended up, after this was my final year at Purdue Calumet because I applied to Purdue's PhD program. And so in terms of my professional progression, I went to Purdue and I finished my degree in 2013. And as Kay mentioned, I worked as an instructional technologist with Impact. And in that program focuses on academic course transformation with faculty from across the university. I worked with faculty from the schools of engineering and agriculture, and then, the social sciences as well. At that time, I did not have people reporting to me, but I started to, apply for jobs. And I must have applied for 50 or 60 jobs at the time before I got my job at George Mason. I was applying for instructional designer jobs, instructional technologist jobs, but I wasn't getting those jobs. But when I applied for the assistant director for digital learning, I did get that job. And then that made me realize that I was really kind of targeting my skills too low because before I went back to school, I had already worked in IT as a manager. I had already led a big project on campus transformation when Purdue Calumet moved from like DOS to the Windows environment, which, I'm dating myself, but that too was a big project. So as the assistant director of digital learning, I had 5 instructional designers work for me, and I was the project lead on this online course development institute. It started with George Mason in January of 2015, and at the time, my manager gave me 4 months to complete this project, get it up off the ground and make it, make the impact at the university level. And the Online Course Development Institute, the work that we did there laid the foundation for our course design process that allows us to scale course development at the institution level. So that's what we did there. And in my work and I was at George Mason for 3 years, and now I've been at the University of Baltimore, which is a public institution. We have about 3,000 students, including law students as well. And so I was the project leader for our LMS, our Canvas transition from Sakai to Canvas. And I am currently in the university rep on the digital accessibility work group, and we also have a micro-credentialing initiative as well. But I still manage our instructional design team of three and a half instructional designers as well. So in terms of my professional practice, one of the things I want to say is that, in all the research literature and stuff like that, there's a lot about how people come into the field of instructional design, what it takes to be a good instructional designer, the path, how all of our paths are different. Some of us come into the profession as teachers, instructors, or we just kind of, I would say kind of, happen in there. It's not a straight approach. But Stefaniak in 2024 in her research she noted that instructional designers need to take a systems level approach to the work. I'm in agreement with that because at the instructional design level for, many people, they're only at the course level, in terms of their design and development work. But as you move up in terms of from instructional designer to senior instructional designer to a manager or director like myself, you need to have a systems level approach. And that means you're looking at all of your stakeholders. That's the faculty, staff, and in my case, indirectly, the students, because I'm working with the faculty and sometimes staff to create, along with the instructional design team members, learning environments that are going to benefit the students. But that's not all to the work. I have to be aware of organizational politics, who the movers and shakers are, and you do too. I don't have to tell you that, as you do the work, as you learn more about your institution, you have to be aware and know how to navigate the organizational politics, or you'll be stunted and not be able to get the work done. And then in addition, in addition to the organizational politics, you have to look at the course and program and departmental and institutional policies. So even though you're doing a course design and development work, you may not be able to, if you're looking at the learning outcomes and stuff like that, you may not be able to do as much as you want because your particular department are governed by outside agencies like with the business school, AACSB, with the law school, ABA, with the nurses, the nursing association, etc. And then also at a systems level approach, you have to consider your available instructional technologies, but also, and this is something recently I've had to deal with as well, I've had to deal with the procurement department, IT, the security group, because we can't implement any new technologies until these technologies are reviewed. Also, with our accessibility team, I can tell you from a systems level approach in the work that we do here at the University of Baltimore, I don't implement any projects unless I have a member from our Office of Disability and Access Services participating on our committees to make sure that we are being cognizant of what our students with special needs, have to offer. And then external, to the available technologies are the vendors. And I would say most recently, I came across the vendor, I won't say they were pushy, but in a way they were pushy, right? Because they wanted me to sign like a contract, even though the contract was free and all of this stuff. Constance, this is free, you won't have to do anything. But listen, I said, no. I said, I'm going to follow my institutional policies on who has signature authority. You know what, colleagues? I'm so glad I did that. Because when I reached out to the procurement director, you know what they told me? Constance, if you sign anything and we don't sign off on it, you're going to be responsible for that contract. Me, you're going to be responsible for that contract. And if something falls through, they don't have to sign it. They can leave you hanging out there. And so, colleagues, I'm just talking to you like, my everyday colleagues. See, I'm going to tell you but never sign anything from a vendor because they'll leave you hanging high and dry. And this too from working with your faculty. They'll say, oh, just get your IT people to implement this product. But then if the product doesn't work, it's the middle of the semester and all that other kind of stuff. And then you're going to be in the middle because you told them to do that. So I'm hopeful that this, my talk, which is not going to be so much emphasizing the technology, but your protection, that's something you don't want to do. But I have to take a systems level approach, and I'm talking to you as well as instructional designers, senior instructional designers, or wherever you are in the organizational chain, that this is the kind of approach that you need to take if you hope to move up. Because if you really think about our literature for instructional design, there's very little that tells us how to go from being an instructional designer to a manager of instructional design. So just how you kind of happen to be in your positions, and maybe, I'll cite some literature, but there's not a lot out there. There's not a lot out there at all. So, these are just some considerations as well. And I will say that I'm on a paper with two colleagues, and we're doing an autoethnographic study of our own practice as a director, senior instructional designer, and instructional designer that will be published in Tech Trends in a special issue. So I'm happy about that. We're making the final revisions, but we're going to be getting at this notion of preparation for your role as a leadership in your institution for instructional design. So this is the systems level approach. And then Gardner, Chongwani, and Washington, these researchers have actually looked at ID management and leadership competencies. What do you need? And so what I did is I took their research, and what they did is they did a Delphi study, and then they also surveyed like 146 people in the field. What does the ID manager and leader need? And so you need good communication skills. Most of you know this, but as a manager, I have to be able to develop out a communication strategy that is not going to be a one-tier thing, but it's going to be a multi-pronged approach, working, at the institution level. Like I'll go to the faculty senate, I'll go to the department level. The team the team meets with individual faculty members in our course consultations. We also go to the staff senate meeting and let them know what we're working on. I also, from a communication standpoint, I have to inspire and empower others. And these are all strategies that these researchers identified. So what does that mean for me? That means as the director, I'm not going to micromanage my team. I have to put trust in them and empower them to do the work. My team and I, we've been together since COVID, the onset of COVID. So we have, I trust my people that they're going to do the right thing, and they've done, a good job for me. But what I've done too is, in terms of possessing interpersonal skills myself, I've taken the time to get to know my team, ask them what they're interested in terms of where do you see yourself? What kind of professional development, would you like to participate in? And I'm also always emphasizing self-care, because our work, it can be overwhelming, dependent on the time of the semester. If it's at the beginning of the fall semester, the prep time leading up to the summer, everybody's very, very busy. You're helping faculty get their courses in order, getting new faculty up to speed, participating in new faculty orientation. But as a manager, I have to be diplomatic. I don't know about you, but I've worked with some managers that have been really difficult to work with. You don't want to work with them. Look, and you might be laughing out there. The only person's face I could see is Kay's. But listen, when I had a manager once, and people just did not like this manager. And when we as a group would need things, the people we go to for assistance in our institution, we're not going, is it for that person? If it's for that person, we're not helping you. You know what I mean? So they would help us, but they wouldn't help that person. You might have had experiences like that. And I'm just saying that because you don't want to find yourself in a position where you possess poor interpersonal skills, and that's detrimental to your team. I mean, even to this day, at that time I never even thought I'd be a manager, right? All I knew at the time was if I ever managed people, I didn't want to be like that. You know what I mean? And sometimes we're like that. And then with the organizational politics and relationships, I'm still friends with people that were on my search committee here at the University of Baltimore, because they gave those hard questions, looked at you, and you know how they try to trip you up in your interview so you're going to make a mistake, but they're just testing you to see how you're going to do. And, especially too in terms of these interpersonal skills, and I don't want to paint such a rosy picture. Listen, I've been threatened by faculty, threatened with being fired and, irate. And, I'm pretty calm. People tell me I'm calm, but, you have to talk a person down from the ledge. And one person in particular, we were doing an upgrade. They came in. Who said you could do this? Now, mind you, I've sent out 10 emails, whatever, 3 months in advance. The upgrade is in 2 days. I said, Professor, we've sent out all of this correspondence. I didn't get it. Well, you know what happened? They didn't read it. Okay, they didn't read it, but that's okay. And I say that because we went on and we got the upgrade done successfully. But when it came time for me to do the Canvas implementation, I picked that professor to be part of my team. Why? Because they provide excellent feedback, and I don't want always yes people around me. If something is not working, I need to know that. You as future leaders, you need to know that too. And I'm talking to you like, and I'm saying future leaders, but to my team, I'll say, you're going to be a future director. What do you think about this? I hope you're learning something from this, because I don't profess to be like a perfect manager, because I'm not. In terms of the context, and this is why it's important to have allies. You're not going to know everything, but if you're plugged into the right people, as you know, they'll let you know what's going on. And then with the context, we're always in my group and with our executive director, we're always doing visioning and strategic alignment for our initiatives. Like one thing I've done is implement a fellows program. We did that for Canvas in terms of helping us to support our transition. We're going to do it for the digital accessibility initiative that we have on campus in support of our being able to meet the Title II directive from the Justice Department. So I get volunteer stipended people to help with these initiatives, and also build goodwill within the department, because as you know, if faculty members see their colleagues successful with a strategy, they're more likely to implement it. And then colleagues with project management. In my work as a director and with the OCDI, I had a project charter. You really need that. The project charter certainly comes from the PMP, the Project Management Institute, but the project charter will define who, what, when, where, and why. And it's also good to have that so you know who's paying for the project. I will say that I've been asked to do projects, and then the people ask me, where's the money coming from? And I'm like, well, you asked me to work on the project. And so I'm just saying to you that always have, the project charter. And I know that, at the onset of this, my discussion, they talked about the project management students that are, in the audience. So they too will be able to talk to you about the importance of having the project charter, having the timeline, knowing when your milestones are, and things like that. Before I go on, are there any questions? I'm just trying to make sure I get everything in, for you.
I'm going to ask a question real quick. So how often do you use project management charters? For the big projects, Or do you have a maybe abbreviated version you use for most things? How are you using these project management charters?
Well, the project charter, provides a great question. The project charter provides the overall framework and rationale for the project itself, which is fine. But I use that in conjunction with the project timeline because I want to make sure that based on what we were asked to do in the project charter, that we are on target for the timeline. You see, with the timeline. That's how I use it. And sometimes you have to use it perhaps multiple times when people ask you to when you get scope creep in a project. And scope creep is when you're asked to do something beyond the original scope of your project that will add additional time to completion. So you want to make sure you have the project charter so you can go back to your stakeholder and say, you asked me to do this within this time frame. If we add this additional requirement, then our timeline's going to change. You do that, but you have your project charter for your protection, and so that you ensure that you are creating the deliverable that you were asked to create. Okay, that's my answer.
No, thank you. And you're right about us having the project management student, project management students in the audience. And we did have a comment from Kristen, and she's saying, I've been studying for my PMP certificate and was so surprised to see how useful those concepts and best practices can be applied to instructional design work. Yes, and
And I would say that's very important. I would say that when I was in my program, I know Sharon Von Roy, she was at George Mason University. She wrote that influential article, it's like project management is not adding, it's not, yeah. So it's that article, and I'll remember to send that to you, Kay. But instructional designers need project management, especially if you are in an institution where they're scaling project management work and you're developing more than one course at a time. If you're doing the build cycle, then you need that project management. You need that project management behind you. And not all schools offer project management as a course for you to take in your program, but I do recommend that you take that. I know that UBalt, we're part of this micro-credentialing project from Coursera, and Coursera has these project management certificate as well. So if your institution has that, that would be beneficial for you to take. Okay, I'm going to move on. Oh, and I would say with these competencies as well, in this study by Gardner, Washington et al., the participants ranked teaching, learning, and design a little bit lower, as well as technology expertise. But I will say, colleagues, as a technician and as a manager, I must have an idea of what my team is doing. And so I've seen where people have felt that any manager could manage the instructional design team. And that's not always the case, because the kind of consultation work that we do, it's not a 9-to-5 job. Sometimes we meet with the faculty, it's later at night. If it's later, then you as the manager, can you adjust when your team member starts because they work to 9 or 10 o'clock at night with the faculty? So you have to have that kind of knowledge of the field and understanding of the work to be empathetic with your team members, because our work is like not 9-to-5. All right. Oh, and I did want to talk one thing about communication and why it's so important. Colleagues, a lot of times, we tend to we talk like this to one another with our research, with our articles, and everything is cited and everything, like that. But I think that it's better to present the same information in an infographic. Now, this is some of my recent work, but if you look at this from the screen, which one would you rather read? I mean, it's not hard, but I'm looking at, you want a plain language strategy. I have colleagues, they're always trying to give faculty everything and tell them everything about all the instructional models and theories. The faculty don't care about that. And I'm not being funny or anything like that, but we have to communicate in such a way that our audience can understand our message. That means our message has to be clear and concise and easy for faculty to understand, especially if they have a PhD in another field, because they weren't trained to be instructional designers, but scholars in their particular area. And I just want to show you that, because perhaps if you don't use infographics to certainly articulate research, that might be something you start to do, because I've adopted this strategy, and I don't get a lot of questions on why are we doing this, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm going to explain to you why you're being asked to do this, because a lot of times people are confused because they don't know why they're being asked to do something. Or if my communication is such that people don't understand, then I have to go back and look at my practice and make sure that the language is clear. And that's all I'm saying here. All right. So I'm a scholar practitioner. That's what I say I am, okay? So when I applied the theory to practice in our online course development institute, certainly when I was at George Mason, we used a backward design principle by Wiggins and McTeague and Hoey. But I looked at backwards design from an institutional level. What did we want the OCDI to do? Help faculty from an institution level understand and design better online courses, more engaging. And from that's a course level. And then from a module level, we have implemented, learning outcomes at each level, at each week. So I used backwards design with the team, and we were collaborative. I worked with the team to develop out this module. We developed out and reviewed the project plan. I always go with a schematic, even with my instructional design team, so that we understand what we're doing, why we're doing, and performing the strategy with the faculty member. We were given a 4-month window. We had module assignments, and I empowered the team member to make decisions, especially when working with their faculty. And like I just said, with the communication strategy, explain why you're doing something. I had to recruit the faculty to participate, and also implement a contract. Now, I don't know if you work with faculty based on a contract, but my team at the time was adamant that we have a contract, so faculty would meet their part of the work and the requirements. Like if you call a meeting with the faculty, that they would come and they would create the deliverables, especially if the work is being stipended. Because if not, and I always, one thing I did mention, whenever I'm bringing a new project to the institution, I will always at least frame it. I'll do, like when I was doing the Canvas LMS transition, I did like 6 months to a year's worth of research and wrote up the rationale. Because why? That way I could frame the discussion. Secondarily, I could see what other schools have done. And thirdly, by doing that previous research, I'm not starting square one with the faculty on a project, which I know if I start like that, it's going to add a year on to the timeline. So I'm cutting that down by doing the work up front. We looked at the needs analysis, what the faculty needed, and then I updated the managers and campus community. And I will say, you know, with this project too, we created a video that we could distribute to the campus community and be shared with our senior leadership team with music, because I was on the floor with the radio and TV group. So in your initiatives, if you know, in your institutions, you may want to do that as well. So that's applying theory to practice part one, and then part two. What happened is we had recruited 19 faculty participants and 17 finished. And I will say, even with this part, when I first came to George Mason University, I didn't know anybody. And I did ask colleagues if they could recommend people that I could work with. Well, they couldn't, but the team did. And we were able to recruit 17 faculty members, and they finished. And based on our work, the team did an excellent job. We won a IT division award for our work, and we got an honorable mention at the university level. And I'm very proud of that. And during that time, one of the team members, they accepted another position, but I made sure that they got the certificate, you know, for the work that they had done on the project. Because I always want people to feel like, you know, as a director, that they're valued, their expertise is valued. That goes a long way with people. You might not be able to, you know, pay people the money and all that, but you can appreciate them on the job and the contributions they make. And I also allow people to work to their strength as well. So in terms of my work and some guiding principles I'd like to share with you all. Take care of yourself. Now, I know this is the e-learning consortium of Colorado. You'll talk a lot about different technologies, but none of these technologies are going to work unless you take care of yourself at whatever level you are in the organization, and especially too if you're a student. So create a safe space for the team to learn, grow, and provide constructive feedback. Colleagues, I like to joke around a lot, and I do that because our work is so difficult from time to time, and we work with such difficult people from time to time, and I'm fine with that. But I'm serious about the work, and I'm not always right as a director. I don't even know you guys, and I'm telling you I'm not always right, but I'm okay with that because I'm going to give 110% every day when I'm coming. I've identified allies, and I encourage you to do the same thing, working at every level throughout the institution. I remember when I was at Purdue, some of my favorite people to talk to were the departmental secretaries, because they knew everybody. And they would say, oh, you don't want to take them. You might want to take them, you know, because everybody talked to them. So really your departmental secretaries, they've earned all these degrees informally because they've talked to everybody. I've already said this, don't sign anything unless you have signatory authority. And I will also say this, if you don't have anything to sign with relation to your project, you are doing something wrong. Because in a university, you must always sign. There is always some kind of process where you have to sign off on something. So that's why you want to make sure you understand the approval process and policies governing your project. Be professional when standing your ground. Now, and don't take things personally. Sometimes this is easier said than done. This is true when perhaps you might have, you know, worked with a really difficult colleague, or people are just unprofessional towards you. You got to stay calm because you are your brand. And so people will know that the other person, they're their brand, but you're your brand, and you want people to know that they can work with you. If I'm hot-headed, I can't lead the team good and get the resources I need for the team. So I'm all for being professional. And I would say don't take things personally. Now I'm writing that from experience because when I was younger in my career, I used to take things personally and go toe to toe with people. This does not work, okay? I mean, but I'm not saying be a doormat either. There's a way to be professional. And this is the only time I'll mention AI. But listen, ChatGPT is really good. If you're really mad with somebody, just write it all out in a letter and then ask ChatGPT or some other AI platform, make my concerns sound professional. It does a good job. And that can help your stress level too. And you're like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to say, because you never want to reply in anger. Commit yourself to lifelong learning. Since I have got my degree, I also earned another college teaching certificate. But I'm always doing stuff. And then, give yourself grace. You don't have to be perfect. You know what I mean? You have to do your best. You're working with people. And I approached this presentation today because we are in the people business. I'm in the people business. The technology is the tool that we work with. And I think sometimes we really get it twisted in that we emphasize technology so much, but we de-emphasize the contribution of people. Well, that's not the way I work. I couldn't work this way by implementing like OCDI or doing the Canvas transition. Any of the projects I do, that my team will tell you. And I'm always thanking them. Constance, you're always thanking us. Well, I should thank you. How many times have you all gone into a store somewhere and the people are mad? What are they mad about? How they got treated by somebody. And you're not going to get your best work out of the group either. And, next I want to provide a book recommendation. This book is called Unreasonable Hospitality. It's not an ed tech book, but it is a book about taking care of yourself as a manager, managerial leadership, taking care of your people, and serving others. And the reason I share this book is because I'm on the Reginald Lewis Museum Board here in Baltimore, and they recommended we read this book because one of the things we do is we support the museum in the service that we provide to the community. But this is a really good book about what goes into leading like a Four Seasons or fine dining restaurant, how you work with the team, how you identify people according to their strengths and stuff like that to make a good learning experience, to make everyone feel like they're part of the group, and so it's a very light read. I'm listening to it in Audible. I love it. It's like having company, but they don't talk back to you, but it's really, yeah. But this is a really good book, and I recommend. We do a lot of reading with our field, but these kind of books are helpful as well because we need different perspectives on leadership, and we work with faculty, but academic leadership, they all have the same kind of principles. And let's see, questions. I hope I didn't go too fast.
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Constance. Does anybody have questions? You can put it in chat. You can go ahead and you can get on mic. I kind of did have a question for you. When you were doing your institute and you got 19 participants for the first time, like doing it, did you feel like that was a number you would have liked more than the 19, or did that seem like a reasonable number to get started?
Yeah, I think it did seem like a reasonable number because I had like 5 instructional design team members working with me. If you have a lesser group and dependent on a lesser group of or number of instructional designers, working with you, and dependent on your build model, whether do you build for the faculty, or do you have a collaborative partnership where you work in conjunction with the faculty to build their courses? It depends on the model, but I think for me, for the first time out, being new to the institution, having to get to know my team and the institution and the faculty all at the same time, my team was very instrumental in helping get started and recruit the faculty. So that was a good number. But with a lesser group, maybe half the number, maybe 9 to 10 people, depending on the size of the instructional design team.
Okay. And now we have some other questions. Erica, can you unmute yourself?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Dr. Harris, thank you so much for sharing. I have a page full of notes here. It was great listening to you. My question is what is the best way to engage faculty to overcome their I guess their silo, their kingdom, they're not wanting to let go, so that they will engage with you and work with you to create content?
Okay, Erica, great question. And it depends, I would say this, it depends on how faculty come to us. Sometimes they volunteer and sometimes they're voluntold. And yesterday I was told that we have some faculty that have been voluntold that they have to work with us, and they're not necessarily the happiest. But what I have done is, in terms of my communication strategy, I seem to have like periodic meetings with the associate deans that govern the faculty groups. I talk to them about new initiatives, like what I'm doing right now has to do with accessibility, and we want to go out to all the schools and talk about accessibility. So I get the associate deans on board, explain to them why this is important. The other important thing, Erica, is to develop out like a little marketing blurb that you can give to the associate deans so they don't have to figure out what to say on why this program exists. And then they can do the marketing, at least the initial marketing for you, and then you can talk with the faculty. What doesn't work is that, and I had to learn this, go to the faculty senate or something like that, talk about a program and hope the information diffuses down. It doesn't, because sometimes you have associate deans, they don't talk to their faculty, but I think that if you take that kind of approach, like a 2 to 3 level approach, reinforce what you're telling the associate deans when you meet with the faculty, and ask the faculty, what do they need? And I think too, as an instructional designer, and this is something that I'm learning as well, one size doesn't fit all. We have offered so many workshops, the faculty don't come. But what they do is they come to one-on-one consultation. So we have to look at what's the best delivery for the faculty. Not only the one-on-one consultations, but we've created videos, we've created workshops, LibGuides, we've created all these things to help faculty get started. Now, there are going to be times that, Erica, you've done all these things, and they still won't do what you ask. And I'm telling every colleague in here, don't take that personal, because people are mad. You know what they've said to me? Constance, I told them to do this. Why didn't they do this? Because we are consultants, colleagues, and we cannot tell faculty what to do. That's something we have to learn. You can't tell them what to do. And please, please, please don't talk down to them. Don't talk down to them like you're a technician and they're not smart, because you will lose them. You will lose them. So those are just some strategies, Erica, I would say. And, when you meet with them initially, just ask them what they need. What's the best way what's the best way to work with them. And in terms of these silos, you know, we do cohort-based projects. Like we have something called Promoting Instructional Excellence. It's cohort-based where we have faculty groups and they do online course development. So they're working with people from other schools. But I'll tell you, silos are entrenched and they're hard to break. In every school I have worked at, and this is like my third one, every school has silos. You know, some because you've got your rich departments and your departments that are not so rich, and you know, science versus social. I mean, it's all kind of stratification. But we don't care about that. We care about providing the best service that we can to the faculty. And that's how I approach the work.
Now, Constance, we're going to be wrapping up soon, but we did get a question from Professor Macrina. Are you using any software to create the infographics? So that great infographic you showed us, was there a specific software you're using?
Yeah, I use Vengage.
Oh.
You know, yeah, I use Vengage, but I know some of the colleagues on campus, they've been talking about using Canvas. But I started using Vengage during my Canvas LMS transition because I found that with me just writing up stuff, you know, like text-based, it wasn't working. And it wasn't engaging to the faculty and staff and, you know, students as well when I was trying to articulate ideas to them. So I use Vengage for all my work. And I will tell you that when I finished the Canvas LMS transition, the head of the faculty senate said, Constance, I wish everybody communicated like you did. We knew exactly what was happening, what was going on. We didn't have to guess. And colleagues, that's what you want. That's why you can have all the research in the background, just create a diagram to show people what it is. And I even had to share that with my boss. He had this long thing, and I'm like, you know, I really recommend, you know, you're always being diplomatic. I really recommend we include an infographic because at least with an image in there, you'll at least invite some form of engagement with the document. So I use Vengage. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much, Dr. Constance Harris, for coming and talking to us about this. And I didn't take notes, but that's okay. I'm going to go back and watch the video. So we will have this recording up. And thank you, because, you know, we're all in different stages of our careers. We're all at different organizations that are in stages of how developed their learning design and online programs are. So thank you very much for this. So everybody, we hope you enjoyed this really great, you know, keynote kickoff, and we'll see you in the other sessions.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate everybody. Thank you for all your hard work, and keep going, and don't limit yourself to where you are. Think about you too are a director if you're not there yet. All right. Thank you, Kate, for inviting me. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Constance, really, really, really good. But I think she left already. So bye, everybody. I'm going to close this one down. Please come to one of the 10 sessions. Bye.